original reason I started doing Ironman was to prove to myself that I could do hard things and I could get out there and I could do something that seemed impossible. And now I want to see how far I can push what is possible. That's what Sub 10 is about. I'm obsessed about it. It's all I think about is like, how do I do an Ironman in under 10 hours? What splits do I need to do? I need to do a 3.8 kilometer swim in an hour or under 60 minutes or less. I need to do a 180 kilometer bike ride in under 5 hours. And I need to run a sub 4, but closer to 3.5 hour marathon. I think it's just one of the best pursuits I could possibly do. And that's why I wanted to do YouTube and document the series. I just wanted to show people that, if you fully focus and you go all in on something, like you can do impossible things and make them possible. My name's Matt and welcome to Sub 10. The idea for an Ironman came 3 or 4 years ago when me and a few of the boys were sitting around in the gym and we're watching the Nick Bear Ironman series. I'm like, you know what? That'd be a really cool thing to go and do. I don't think any of us really knew exactly what an Ironman was. Obviously swim, bike and run, but we definitely didn't comprehend the distances or the amount of training and just how physically and mentally challenging this endeavor would be. Fast forward a few months, COVID hit and everyone just kind of lost focus on that goal, which is fair enough. We all have different things. Some of us had kids, some of us went into different business things, including myself. I was running my own business at the time and I was just fully engulfed in the business, trying to get to CrossFit a couple of times a week to keep some sort of fitness going. But to be honest, I was just so run down. I was like, whatever training I was doing was like more for my mental space. Over that COVID period, training sort of fell away because the gyms closed and my mental health deteriorated pretty quickly. I have suffered with depression and anxiety the majority of my life since my early teens. And I just knew I was in a really bad spot. Taking out in my relationship wasn't going well. I was making negative choices, things that were short-term sighted, things that just they were not in line with who I thought I was and who I wanted to become. Fast forward to the end of COVID, and in hindsight, this is kind of like a grace of God sort of thing, but I got an offer to sell the business. Someone wanted to come in, buy it, and just take all of that off my plate. I spoke to my partner and I'm like, you know what, for your mental health, do that. Like, let's just sell the business, do a full reset and decide from there what you want to do. I was like, okay. So we sold the business and instantly it was like this just weight off my shoulders. I just felt, oh my God, like this is unreal, fantastic. Probably 4-6 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks after that, my mental health started to deteriorate again because I had nothing to focus on. I was just sort of in limbo. This idea about the Ironman had been in my head the whole time, all through COVID. It was always just this thing in the back of the head, bucket list item. Like, you know what, like maybe one day all the boys will come back together and we'll go and do the Ironman and it'll be a cool roundabout story. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, that's probably not realistic and maybe I should just go and do it. I'd had about 4 months from that decision to Ironman Western Australia. I already had a bike, but I didn't know how to ride a road bike. Didn't know how to swim, hadn't done any, endurance running for me was 5Ks, had no endurance background whatsoever. My mental health was so bad at this state that I just decided, fully commit to the Ironman. If you can fully commit to an Ironman and complete it and prove to yourself that you can do something, you can commit to something, you can go through it knowing nothing about it, you can just work really hard and get something done. I actually made a deal with myself that I would let myself live. My mental health was in such a bad state that was I was contemplating suicide regularly. I was just lost. I just didn't know what to do. And that felt like the only way out. The pressure was so much that I didn't know what else to do. So I was like, you know what, just commit to the Ironman. Time doesn't matter, nothing matters. All that matters is proving to yourself that you can do something really hard, you can persevere and you can go and do it. And that's going to be like a definitive moment in your life. You either prove yourself that you can do it and you deserve to go on and be able to do more hard things, or you pull the pin, you quit, you give up and give up on life. So 4 months of just being fully engulfed of Ironman, didn't have a coach, just wanted to teach myself everything, wanted to do it all myself. I didn't want anyone else to be responsible for the outcome. It had to be all on my shoulders. So 4 months, taught myself everything, or everything I thought I needed to know, taught myself how to ride a road bike, taught myself how to swim, learn about running and how to run further distances, all the nutrition, etc. And then we got to Ironman Western Australia in December of 2022. So Ironman Western Australia 2022, obviously super nervous, didn't really know what to expect. I thought I'd trained really hard. I thought I was ready. I thought I was prepared. And I guess that's a bit of naivety, like you don't know what you don't know. But got to the start line, felt weirdly confident, and just went out and did the damn thing. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim, 180 kilometer bike ride, and a 42.2 kilometer run, or a marathon. And it's really weird. I got about halfway through the bike and got a flat. And for people who know bikes, I was running tubeless tires. So it's not just as simple as putting a tube in. It actually like ripped the rim tape on my bike. It wasn't, the rim tape wasn't done properly. Anyway, story for a different day. And I put a tube in, trying to as a temporary fix, and it popped, and I was like, fuck. I actually had to sit on the road for about an hour and a half waiting for the bike mechanic to come because I needed new rim tape. And I was sitting there on the side of the road, and I was like, maybe this is a God's sign or a higher power sign. It's like, you know what, you're just not destined to finish this race. So I was sitting there just like, it's a weird mindset to be in. Half of my thoughts were like, okay, like you're gonna get a lift back into town, you know, say goodbye to your partner. And hadn't spoken to Sam about any of my thoughts previously in terms of like the deal I'd made, but like that was definitely a consideration, like just going to sort of enjoy the last couple of days with her. And then the other part of me, like the competitive part of me, was like, okay, as soon as this mechanic comes, the bike's going to be fit, and you've still got about 80, 90 Ks to ride, and then you got a marathon to run. So it's just a really weird dynamic to be in. Anyway, the bike mechanic rocks up. I said hour and a half later, and he goes, mate, if I don't have enough rim tape, like your day's over. I'm like, okay, like it's done. Like I was pretty much come to acceptance that like this is the end of my day. He had enough by millimeters, like got it fixed, got the tire inflated, and I like, okay, off we went. And from that point, weirdly, I just like, okay, like I'm going to finish this thing. Like it's done. Like I've got through that. Like that was the adversity. And now it's like, there's nothing that's going, even if I've got to fucking jog this bike in, like I'm going to work it out. And from there, just went through the motions, another couple of hours on the bike. And I could just feel myself falling in love with this sport. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the switch was, but after that bike got fixed and I was able to keep riding, I was like, today's like, I want to do this. This is what I do now. Like triathlon, Ironman, ultra endurance stuff. This is just the best. Overcoming the adversity, even though I didn't necessarily frame it as overcoming adversity at the time, overcoming adversity and pushing through and be like, okay, like we're going to do this thing. And that sort of, that feeling, that internal feeling of, I can't even describe, there's nothing like it. Some people might think like, okay, you had 90 kilometers to ride and a marathon to run, like that's a lot. And honestly, it went like that. Like it was just like the most enjoyable experience of my life, because I knew I was going to finish this race. I was going to do it and everything was going to be okay. I just had this weird feeling that everything was going to be all right from here out. So I still to this day don't exactly know how to describe it, but that's the best I can do, is like everything's going to be good. And you know, I still watch the footage now on my phone of me coming down the red carpet at Ironman, and I get goosebumps. That first one, just like, it takes me back to that moment. And I can just like, I can feel it. I can feel that feeling that like I did it. Like everything's like, everything you set out to achieve, you achieve. You prove to yourself, even though a lot of people didn't think you could do it. A lot of people sort of just were like, oh yeah, he's just going to go do this thing. Maybe not, who knows? And like, there's just, it was such a special day. And like, people use this term loosely, but it just sent my life on a whole different trajectory. from that moment, changed my life and just went down this road. And I've been obsessed with the sport ever since. Fast forward a couple of months, I decided to do Ironman Cairns. I was fully into my Ironman training at the time. Still obviously learning a great deal. I'd got a coach, but I guess I might have been a little bit cocky, a little bit arrogant, because I was like, okay, like I've done this now. Like now I want to start putting my effort into how good can I be at an Ironman? How fast can I go? How quickly can I get this done? And like maybe have a chance at going to a Kona, going to like a world championship, something like that. So sort of chatting with my coach about that, I'm like, cool, like let's just do this race, set a baseline and find out where you're at. Because obviously going into Bustleton, what I thought was training wasn't really training. Like my longest ride was 110 Ks. I did that once. Longest swim was 3 Ks. Did that once. Longest run was like maybe 30, low 30s, something like that. Also only did that once. In hindsight, that is just a ridiculously small amount of volume to do for an Ironman. Just had no idea what I was doing, but still got it done. Going into Cairns, I was like, I'm training significantly more, but something was off mentally. I just was potentially a little bit cocky, a little bit arrogant. Like I understand what I'm doing. Like I'm going to do this like no matter what. From the adversity I overcame at Ironman WA, whatever I dealt with there, I can 100% deal with at Cairns. Like there is going to be nothing that Cairns can throw at me that I can't handle. Fast forward to Ironman Cairns, I probably shouldn't have even raced in hindsight, but had a couple of injuries. I was unwell and I was like, you've paid all this money, you just go and do it. Again, don't really like to talk about higher powers and things like that, but maybe getting unwell was a bit of a sign because I just wasn't checked in. I wasn't focused. I was like, I'm going to do this no matter what. Like I kind of was ignoring my coach. I was like, I'm just going to go out and race this thing and I'm going to go flat stick and I'm going to surprise everyone by how much I've improved. Throwing up almost immediately as soon as I got to the start line, just sick as a dog, white as a ghost, couldn't keep any nutrition down. Fast forward 40 minutes, 45 minutes, lifeguards came up to me while I was swimming. They're like, hey, if you don't start getting your shit together and stop throwing up, we're going to put you out of this race. Fuck, I'm 45 minutes into this thing and I'm getting told like, you need to get your shit together. I basically told the lifeguard, I was like, hey dude, I'm fine. Just like swallowed some seawater, like just chill. Not 30 seconds after I said that, whole back locked up in cramp, pretty much immobile and was doggy paddling. And he was like, nah, you're coming out. And I was like, nah, I'm sweet. Just bugger off. So like sort of doggy paddling away, grabs me by the collar, pulls me out. That race is done, which is obviously a very humbling experience to say the least. It was just like, it was never in my wildest dreams did I think like I'm not even going to finish the swim of my second Ironman. It's like, what the fuck's going on here? And then, I look back over the training and I look back over everything. I was like, maybe you got the result you deserved. You didn't commit to training. You didn't commit to nutrition. You were sort of just like a bit all over the shop. You were just sort of training sporadically. Maybe it was just like, you got what you deserved. Maybe not. Not 100% sure, but that was how that race went. The Ironman kicks off pretty early. So you're swimming at sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And to be pulled out, let's call it before 8 a.m. And then you're back at your hotel after you get all your medical checks and everything. I was back at my hotel by 9. And just to be sitting in a hotel room by yourself while, everyone's out there doing the thing and you're just sort of reflecting on what just happened. It's a weird experience. And I had a lot of time to think. And I was like, you know what? You got another fork in the road moment. And obviously I'm using a little bit of hindsight to phrase this, but you got another fork in the road moment. You can either put Ironman away, you've done one, you finished it, you're in the top 0.1% or whatever the percentages are of people like who have ever done an Ironman, which is unreal, or you go all in. And obviously, by making this video, you can guess which way that went. I think I still have the text message. It was about 6 o'clock that night. I texted my coach guy, who was actually in Germany at the time at Challenge Roth. And I said, I'm going to go to Bustleton and I'm going to do a sub 10-hour Ironman, which was only 6 months away. He actually didn't reply. He read it and just left me on red, which is his polite way of saying, you're a fucking lunatic and you're dreaming. But I really thought, I was like, if you just go all in, fully commit, you can really, really do it. Again, in hindsight, I probably didn't understand the level of training, the level of athlete you need to be to complete an Ironman in under 10 hours. And I wasn't there yet. Fast forward 6 months. 6 months of really, really good training, was fully committed, ticked every box. I couldn't have done anything more for that build. And we get to Ironman Western Australia, and this is the really tough thing about the sport. You've got to put it all together on the day, and you only get one day. You don't get to go and race next weekend, the week after. In season, there's a race every 3 months, maybe. And if you don't get the right day and it doesn't all click, it really tests you, because it's just such a battle to know you've worked for 6 months, and you know it pretty quick too. 20 minutes in, you're like, today's not my day. 40 minutes in and 2 hours in, whatever it is, you know when it clicks, and you're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. We're at Ironman Western Australia, finished swim. I was a little bit behind on the swim, but I was like, I can make this up on the bike. Halfway through the bike. So we're about 4 hours into the day, 4.5 hours into the day. And I'm like, nah, it's just not happening. Like, the power wasn't coming to me. It was just really difficult. I was struggling to keep my nutrition down. It was just a rough day. And this is all part of endurance sport, whether you're an ultra runner, marathon runner, triathlete, whatever. Like, you'll just have days where it doesn't click, and you need to learn these lessons. No matter how much you simulate it in training, that's a controlled environment. You get everything that you need there. When you're out on the course, it's just like you gotta deal with curveballs, and sometimes you can't deal with them, and you need to go through that to learn how to deal with them in the future. We're about halfway through the bike of Ironman Western Australia 2023. I kind of spat the dummy, realized it wasn't going to happen. A couple of hours left on the bike, and then you got to run a marathon, which I was just not happy about at all. But anyway, we got through the bike, and I saw my coach there, and it's not on the cards. Like, I'd probably given away close to an hour on the bike just from having a bad attitude. I was just cruising in, which is kind of shitty thing to do when you're competing. But I just didn't know how to deal with what had happened on the day. I saw my coach on the run, and I was like, fuck this sport's stupid. Don't want to do it. Like where did this day come from? Like, all the training was perfect, and I still don't get the day that I thought I deserved. He just said, just keep running, dude. Like, you can either pull out or you can keep running. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, we've come all the way to Western Australia. Might as well finish this thing. I might have got like 25 Ks into the marathon, and I was still just filthy. It's like, this is hot day, Western Australia, wind's blowing. It's like, why am I even here? And I ran into this fella, and I was having a yarn to him while we were jogging along. And he was like, why not just finish the day happy? Like, it doesn't cost anything to have a good attitude. Just like, try and find some wins, see what you can do. And I was like, you know what? He's probably right. So I just like spent the next 10 to 15 Ks, whatever it was, just trying to enjoy it, taking in the crowd. If you ever go to Ironman Western Australia, it's like the crowd is unreal. The whole town lines the foreshore, and it's honestly awesome. All the pubs are along the beach, and just everyone's there having a great time, cheering you on. And really that last 10 or 12 Ks it was actually one of the best experiences ever. I was just like, you know what, this is so cool. Like, even on my worst day, I can do something really, really hard, which is, again, just cementing that what I wanted out of Ironman originally was to prove to myself I could do hard things. I ended up finishing Ironman WA in like 11 hours, 45, 50, somewhere around that, high 11s, which obviously is a long way from sub 10, but significant improvement from Cairns, obviously, because I didn't even finish that race. A couple of hours quicker than what I did Ironman Western Australia the previous year. So I could see progress. Even on my worst day, I was able to put out a decent performance that, if you take away the bad attitude, like, pretty happy with. Sort of had a bit of a debrief from my coach guy, and I was like, what do you reckon? Like, what do you want to do? And he actually said, like, I think you should take a full, 8 months off racing and just focus on training. And my head was like, we're going sub 10. Like, there is no alternative. Like, you said you were going to go sub 10, you didn't do it. And I probably convinced myself that I could have done it on that day. Hindsight, probably couldn't have, even if I had a really, really good day. Probably would have been a 10 at the start of my time, but it probably would like 10:50, 10:40, something like that. But I was just so focused on going sub 10. I sort of said to the guy, I was like, look, I think I need to do this. I think like whatever the next race is, let's do it. And he's like, oh, let's go back to Cairns and we'll do that. And I was like, okay, sweet. Again, a really good training block leading into Ironman Cairns, and you get to Cairns. So it's 6 months from Western Australia to Cairns, 6 months of really, really hard work. Got to Cairns and I was just so confident. I was just so locked in. I was so focused. I was like, today's the day. Like, I can just feel it. I can just fucking feel it. And it was Cairns. For anyone who's raced Ironman Cairns knows the curveballs that humidity and heat and that environment throw you. And Cairns did everything it could to bowl me out again. It wanted me not to finish. I got so impossibly sick on the bike, 45 Ks in, 30, 40 Ks in, something like that. Couldn't keep water down, obviously couldn't keep any nutrition down. I was just throwing up everywhere. Side of my bike was covered in vomit. It was just a horrendous day. It got to the point where I was coming back in to Cairns City and I was so dehydrated and just so out of it. I was like, maybe just have a sit down next to one of these trees for 20 minutes and try and drink some water and get a bit of a reset. And I was like, oh, if you sit down, like that's it. You're not getting back up. I was like sort of winding over the road. I was a little bit dizzy. I was just like, you're in a bad way. It was such a rough day. Somehow got into T2. So finish the bike. You got to go in, drop your bike off, put your run shoes on. And I remember just sitting in there, hands in my head, just going, how the fuck am I going to run a marathon? I was just like dizzy. I was trying to tie my shoelaces, and one of the volunteers there was watching me trying to tie my shoelaces. He's like, bro, are you all right? And I was like, can you give me some Coke or something? Like a lolly, anything. Like I just need something. And he was like, do you need me to get a medic? I was like, do not get a fucking medic. If I see a medic, like they're not going to let me run. I was like, just get me some sugar. He comes back with like a little thing of Coke, and I was just had that. I was like, okay, sweet. Tied my shoes, got out on the run course, and I was like, just run to the first aid station. And in Ironman or in triathlon, they're about every 2.5 kilometers. So I was like, just 2.5 kilometers, do that. And I actually got out and actually ran okay. I was like, wasn't running at my race pace, but I was just like, oh, it doesn't feel awful. Got to the aid station. I was just like, you had some Coke, like that didn't upset your stomach. Just keep drinking Coke. And I was like, cool, Coke and like a lolly. Like that's all I could stomach. Run to the next aid station, repeat, run to the next aid station, repeat. And then felt pretty quickly in my mind, I was like, oh, you're about halfway through this thing. Like, okay, like you can probably like just keep doing this Coke lolly formula and get through it. Fast forward about another 10 Ks. I'm like, I was actually running relatively well up until 30 Ks. I was on pace for about like a sub 4 hour marathon, which considering the day, like you'd just be like, what? Not possible. Somehow I was just like stringing it together. Get to about 30 Ks and I'd probably drunk 2.5 liters of Coke at this point. Combined 2.5 liters of Coke with running. It's not the best formula. And I just began to projectile vomit. Who could have seen that coming? And the last 10, 12 Ks was just run 100 meters, walk 100 meters, run 100 meters, walk 100 meters. And that sub 4 hour marathon time blew out to like, I can't remember, nearly 5 hours. It was a long 10, 12 Ks to finish up, but got through it. As soon as I got through, the medics were like, hey bro, like you need to go lay down. And I was like, yeah, just should be right. They took me into the medic tent and they're like, do you want an IV or anything? I was like, no, just some chalky milk, should be sweet. They loaded me up with some chocolate milk and some ice cream and they're like, oh, we'll probably keep you for a little while just to make sure you're all right. I was like, no, like I'll be sweet. Just if I need, like, I'll just go to the hospital if like I don't get any better, like it's fine. And yeah, that was Ironman Cairns, and that brings us to present day where the pursuit for a sub 10 hour Ironman continues. So I finished Ironman Cairns, and it was I don't remember the exact time. It was pretty similar to Ironman Western Australia 6 months earlier, that high 11s, which again weirdly filled me with some confidence that, okay, you've had two really shitty performances. One self-inflicted because of a bad attitude. One, you just got crook and not a lot you can, that's just the cards you were dealt on that day. But you were still able to do like a high 11s Ironman. I still felt so confident that I was capable of doing sub 10 if I had my day. And that 30 Ks of running at the end of off the bike, that 30 Ks of running off the bike just solidified in my head. I was like, if you had have kept that up for just 10 more Ks and not got sick again, there would have been a 10 at the front of your time. If you had have been able to put the bike together just a little bit better, you would have been in striking distance of that sub 10. So I was just like, fuck, like I know I can do it. I know I can do a sub 10 hour Ironman. And then that brings us to today, where I'm still in the pursuit of sub 10 hour Ironman, and that's what we're working towards. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this YouTube series. Is I really wanted to put myself out there and document what it takes to do this. And I think it's going to take everything I've got present day to complete a sub 10 hour Ironman. If we look at it, it's a 3.8 kilometer swim. It is a 180 kilometer bike ride, and then it is a full marathon with transitions in under 10 hours. What has Ironman taught me over these years? Again, I hate to use these terms because I think people overuse them, but it has just changed everything about me. It has changed the way I look at problems. It has changed my relationship. It's changed my relationship with myself. It's changed who I am as a human in every way possible, and almost all for the positive. I think some people might look at myself and think I am too obsessed with it. I am too focused on it, but I don't see that as a bad thing. I think if you're all in on something, you should be fucking all in on something. And I think it's just, if I had to sum it down, I think it is just consistency. Like, you can get so far and beat so many people and prove to yourself so many different things if you were just consistent. I think we live in this world where everything is as instant as it possibly could be. You can have anything delivered to your door, but it honestly doesn't matter how good of an athlete you are, what your experience is, who you are, where you come from. Like, there is no cheating in endurance, whether that is Ironman, whether that's a marathon, whether it's ultra marathon, trail running, endurance bike riding, whatever it is. Like, you just have to put in the time and you have to be consistent. You can't do a hero day and train for 8 hours and be like, yeah, I'm ready. You can't train sporadically and think, I'm going to do this thing. You have to just stack bricks on bricks on bricks on bricks and build the athlete that you want to be, build the person you want to be. And that's the only way that you're going to achieve anything.